All right, good morning and
Morning,
welcome
Stevie.
to the book club on cancer for Cancer Support Community Delaware. Today we have author Robert Brams with us, and he and his wife Kim are going to tell a little bit about his story and talk about his book. So I'm going to start today by reading you the foreword, and here's just a look at the book, Forever Optimistic. And I'm going to read you the foreword, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. And this was written by the United States Senator for the state of Delaware, Chris Coons. I am honored to prepare this foreword for Bob Brams' new book, Forever Optimistic, Fighting Brain Cancer, Finding Your Best Path, and Leading a Life with Purpose. Bob and I went to neighboring competing high schools in Wilmington, Delaware, where, among other things, we were both involved in the sport of wrestling, a definite character builder for life. We went our separate ways after high school, and we both ended up becoming lawyers. We met again years later in Washington, D.C. at a fundraiser hosted in my honor at Bob's law firm, Patton Boggs. The event was held before my first Senate term, and I met Bob along with his partner, the late Tommy Boggs. It was great seeing Bob, another Delawarean, working in Washington, D.C. We crossed paths again the last couple of years at two major wrestling tournaments in Delaware. We both presented at programs at the tournaments focused on the fight against cancer. Though an excellent lawyer, Bob's 30-year law career was cut short in 2015 by a brain cancer diagnosis. Bob participated in panels as a brain cancer survivor and former Delaware wrestler. Indeed, he has quite an inspiring story to tell. Bob had his first brain surgery January of 2015. Just hours after the surgery, the condition took a sharp turn for the worse, and Bob ended up on the brink of death. He had a hemorrhagic stroke, suffered a coma, ended up on life support. His insurers found he had suffered a catastrophic loss. His medical team described him as the sickest man in the neurointensive care unit. After years of rehab and regular MRIs, he had to undergo a second brain surgery in 2019 to address further tumor growth. This book runs through the harrowing details of Bob's near-death experience. Following all the treatments and now no longer practicing law, Bob has had the time to reflect on his life, the path he chose, and how he and his wife have raised a beautiful family, their two children now both college graduates. His book focuses on what has worked and what hasn't worked for him in business and life. Above all else, Bob's story is inspirational and focuses on the importance of finding one's passion and seeing value in helping one find success and true happiness in life. I know the cancer battle personally, as it has affected my family directly as well as many friends. I can empathize with the struggles that Bob and his family have undergone and still go through. While I've spoken on the fight against cancer, Bob takes it a step further by writing this book, Forever Optimistic. His positive attitude exudes from each chapter over his long road to recovery. Bob's story is inspiring on many levels. His story is deeply moving, surprisingly humorous, and brimming with hard-won wisdom for readers from every walk of life. I hope you find deep value in reading about Bob's compelling journey. So I made, spoiler alert, I told kind of a summary of the story there, but I thought that was a great way to just introduce Bob and hear more about his story. So Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Greetings, everyone. I'm Bob Brams, as you know. Erica, thanks for that summary. It's great. So my wife's here, as you people know, in the upper right corner, Kim. And I went, if you go to my website, you'll see things about donors and all that kind of stuff. So that's all good. I want to thank Erica and Nikki for organizing all this and putting this together. And they've been an enormous help. I want to turn the floor over to Kim for a second. Quite simply, Kim saved my life. was undergoing serious issues at the hospital, and Kim was there by my side. Kim, I'll turn it over to you, and then I'll take it back.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So Bob, as you know, is the author of Forever Optimistic, and Bob went from being one of the top construction lawyers in the world to something much different in December of 2014 when he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was an unbelievable winter. Bob, do you have a synopsis of his medical history? He's been in 4 hospitals. He's had 2 brain surgeries. He was at Hopkins for a month on the neurointensive care unit. He was on life support. He had a hemorrhagic stroke. They really did not think that he was going to make it. It was like less than a 1% chance, and he did. He survived. It was about 4 or 5 hours after surgery. When he came out of surgery, he was awake, talking, alert, and then things just progressed downhill. And I noticed like just kind of weird behaviors. He just couldn't get settled. And I kept saying something to the nurse. You know, everybody had gone home because it was like 10 o'clock at night, meaning everybody's gone home, the doctors, the surgeons, people that were on call. And they kept saying, you know, this is kind of typical. This is kind of front lobe behavior. Finally, I just said, you know what? I'm a clinical social worker. I know what front lobe behaves like. This is not front lobe behavior. And I said, basically, if you don't get somebody down here now, I'm going to scream and wake up this entire hospital. And all of a sudden, everybody converged in the room, and they took him down for a CAT scan. And there it was. He had a hemorrhagic stroke, and he basically went into a coma, and he was on life support. And then he had to have, after he made it, like I said, he was in Hopkins for a month. He then went down to National Rehabilitation Center, and he spent about a month there. He basically had to relearn to think, talk, walk. He had no balance. Then he spent years in therapy, and then we go back for a second surgery, and we ended up out at UCSF. At this point, we found out that possibly the reason that Bob had a hemorrhagic stroke is that he was undiagnosed with a blood disorder known as a hemophilia. So for the second surgery, we were very scared, but he was giving clotting factors. And after the second surgery, he was basically up walking the halls at UCSF that night. And he was walking the streets of San Francisco like 3 days later. I mean, just a completely different picture. And so Bob was diagnosed with an oligodendroglioma. And after the second surgery, he went through radiation and chemo. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. Then we had problems with radiation and so forth. But in short, he's here. His story is long, detailed, horrific, but he's here to tell you about it.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be that guy. Wait, I was that guy. So anyway, to put more graphically, I had a number of friends who would stop by the hospital to see me. And Kim, when I look so bad, Kim let my friends in to see me. I mean, I can't imagine. I think my brother-in-law took one picture of me. I never saw it again. I think it was deleted. Anyway, but if you open my book, you'll see a number of pictures from my second surgery where you see the real things happened. Anyway, I'm not out of the woods yet either, because I have MRIs like every 3 months, and I get peculiar results on my MRIs, which the tumor board from Hopkins has to look at, my doctors in California have to look at, to figure out whether it's radiation damage or tumor growth. And we just had an MRI, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, where they ultimately concluded that it was not tumor growth. It was actually radiation damage, because some of the shadows on the MRI got smaller. So that was a relief after 2 years of total uncertainty. Anyway, Um, I've also gotten a prognosis that I don't like at all. None of you guys would like it all. But so I really, the only thing I can really do now is really minimize the stress I'm feeling. And I really work on the idea of having a glass half full attitude, a very positive attitude. I've always had a very positive attitude in life, but now I have to really focus it on my my health, and that's what I'm doing. So when I see like a bad thought coming through my mind about this whole issue, I kind of like knock it out. I just have to ignore it and cross it out. And so that might happen 4 or 5 times a day. It's kind of odd, but that happens. I knock it out and I'm happy again. So one thing I've also thought I've been doing is de-stressing, okay? Getting all the stress out of my life and operating in a way that I don't feel stress. I just minimize, declutter, all that kind of stuff, get organized. You know, I've had to work with my kids who both have graduated from college about how they should think about life, how they should think about business, how they should interact with other people in business, and I feel more comfortable now that with those things taken on my life, the things were causing conflict, and so that's how I feel a lot better about things. So I guarantee, if you, as you all probably know, you've been around for a while, if you throw things out that you don't need in life that you haven't used in 5 years, you just start to feel better. You know, it's just a different kind of experience, and it's one that minimized stress for me. Now, I changed my diet. It wasn't like I was eating in some crazy way, but I really worked on my diet to, like, I don't want to eat like red meats. I don't digest them well. And I really do feel like there's a deep connection between, and you probably read about this, between digestion and your brain. So if you're digesting things well, your brain kind of feels better and clearer and all that stuff. So, and that's the way I kind of like to feel. That's what we probably all like to feel. So in short, like, clean up your stuff, organize, get places on time, throw out old stuff, guarantee you'll feel better. Anyway, in terms of the diet, we talked about that. There's a number of other things I mentioned here about de-stressing. And one is like regular exercise. Like, I walk all the time. I walk like 6 days a week. And it's funny, a friend of mine who's at NIH got me this book. It's called How to Walk. Okay. So they're publishing books about the simple notion of walking. And so I go out and I'll listen to music on Spotify. I'll listen to podcasts. I listened to podcasts yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it just makes the walk go by faster. But I just take in the outdoors and enjoy the outdoors and de-stress. I think about meditation and things like that. So I have a picture here, which you maybe you can see it. It's like a mountainside with all kinds of beautiful flowers in it. Can you see that? Okay, so that's like, I do things a lot in my own way, which I don't intend to offend anybody by that. That's a picture that's in my mind about how I think about a good thought that helps me, just get into a relaxed mood, And so I have that picture in mind at all times. So if I'm, driving my car, I might think about that picture and just sort of feel better. Okay. And then, kind of, I have a list here within the document you may have, which talks about loving, laughing, family, and family, friends, all that good stuff. And, humor is a great thing. And I have a buddy who, he and I laugh a lot, and I just feel better with that kind of humorous attitude going on in my mind. And so that's kind of worked out well for me. And I think it can work out well for everybody. You can't, like, I can't watch like bad movies with bloodshed and all that kind of stuff. Too depressing for me. I don't want to have that at all. And also,
Bob has cut out anything toxic, or negative. He just doesn't deal. He'll walk away.
yeah. My son is a challenge, a great kid.
He can be toxic.
Every day he asks for money, something. He's a very smart kid, but he's always got so much going on. And he bombards me. And I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. She's all yours. So anyway.
Bob had to hang up on him last night because Bob can't take a lot of sensory stimulation. So, yeah. And my son talks, and so he just
was at 11:41.
Gotta go. Bye.
Yeah, I just hung up on him. Anyway, so I avoid arguments. I recently heard a speech on somebody about how to deal with arguments, and he gave an example about how your spouse wants you to come home after work at 6 o'clock, 6:30, whatever. And so the spouse goes home, leaves the office, goes home. He gets home at 6:10, and his wife says, "You're late." And what the guy says is that what the speaker recommended is to just say one word after you get that kind of response, which kind of drives you crazy. And he says, "Interesting." And that just kind of puts things on hold. It doesn't respond to the question, it just puts things on hold, just say "interesting." Anyway, my approach has always been to kind of excuse myself from an argument, go upstairs, watch comedians, and just enjoy it. And that's kind of worked for me. So Kim might get frustrated by that sometimes, but I'm like, just not gonna engage. Particularly if I think I'm right. But some things to think about. Don't mistake being busy for being successful. So Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are old bridge buddies and friends. Just I guess a billionaires club or something. And Bill Gates got a hold of Warren Buffett's calendar. And Warren Buffett's calendar for any given week doesn't have more than 3 entries in it. And Bill Gates had lots of entries. Okay. And so Bill Gates discussed that with Warren Buffett, said, "How is that? How's that work?" He goes, "Don't need a lot of events. I just rather think." And somehow it's worked for him. He's obviously accumulated income. So, sometimes being too busy is a sign of failure, in my view. I've, told my kid that as a lawyer, I'd rather have, 3 cases that are very large with some number of witnesses than 10 cases, also with a lot of witnesses that are not that large. It's just too stressful. You're doing much more with all those 10 cases than you could with 3 cases. Anyway, the big picture, is there really that much that's worth arguing about? And I go back to my stock answer. What is that? Interesting. Okay. Just move on. There's really not that much that's really worth arguing about. And one other thought, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Okay. I've had a lot of frustrations in life where I started things, I didn't do well. I practiced harder, got better. I think with an awful lot of things in life, you can start poorly, practice more, and get better. Okay. And you'll feel better about yourself. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. True or false? Okay. It may be false. Okay. Because a good friend of mine had to take on a more stressful task at work. Okay. And if you're younger, I think, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But when you're older, I think what doesn't kill you can make you weaker. And for all I know, that impacted me. I didn't feel like overly stressed at work, but who knows how things work. So, think about that. Okay, now everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. It's got to be Mike Tyson's greatest line. Yep, we've all been punched in the face, and you know what? We're down on the mat, but we're going to get off the mat and keep going. Just got to do it. Got to head forward. Okay. Now, if you're raising the next generation to have sound values and be productive citizens, give yourself a pat on the back. You've really done a very important thing in life. You got the next generation moving along. You don't have to save the world. I mean, one of my passions now, almost by definition, is helping to find a cure for brain cancer. That's law was my passion before. Now, my new passion, by definition, is helping to find a cure for cancer. I'm working with some great people. My surgeon at Hopkins, who's chief of neurosurgery there, my surgeon at University of California, San Francisco, the chief of neurosurgery there. They're the California surgeons on Biden's blue ribbon panel, our old Joe Biden. And so I'm really trying to focus on that, working also with the top guy at NIH. So lots of things I'm trying to do to make some sense of things. And then, I feel like I've read this. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us put us directly on the path to the best things. And surprisingly, I may be on a better path now. I mean, helping people in a broader way, helping people who are facing cancer, facing brain cancer, and figuring out a cure for that, it made me the far better way in life. I think I did a good job in law, but it was really helping in a narrow way, on major matters, but in a narrow way, just a group of people as opposed to a large group of society that's plagued by brain cancer. So sure, I'm dealing with a lot of health issues. Sure, I'm definitely working on the basis of a new me, but you know what? I'm still happy. I'm still happy. I'm grateful for all the good things that have happened in my life. I'm organized. I stay positive. My kids are college grads now. I've taught them important values in life, and they've got jobs, and they're happy in their jobs. So all good stuff. So that's all I have. I'm, happy to talk about other issues in the book, and whatever questions you guys have, Kim and I are happy to answer.
Good.
And-
I'm going to ask you a couple questions, Bob.
Sure.
I think talk us through a little bit for those, especially if we haven't read the book. So the way they found your diagnosis, there was a fender bender, and because of that, you went and got an MRI. So talk a little bit about that and how they even found your cancer.
Yeah, I was actually driving to a doctor that morning. This is December 2014, and I was taking a left turn, and a woman hit me from behind. I was asymptomatic. I had no idea I had any problem. Turns out I had 6-centimeter tumor in my brain at the time I got hit. Anyway, but yeah, I got hit, and Kim's uncle was chief of neurosurgery at Fairfax Hospital in Virginia. And he said, I was feeling kind of tingling in my hands and in my face. And he said, we're about to go on vacation. So he said, why don't you go get an MRI to see what that might be? And I was expecting maybe some bruising in some way as a result of the whiplash effect of the event. I went there, and the doctor, this was on forget what night, anyways, like Thursday or Friday night, and we were having a holiday party at our house. And
2014.
in 2014. So I took my assistant out for lunch. Then I said, okay, I'll stop by Sibley Hospital, get the MRI, got the MRI, and the doctor said, you have a spot in your brain. And I'm like, what? So like, I called Kim. Kim's in the middle of the party, or the start of the party, and and she said, I better come down there. So she came down. I was kind of like, you don't have to come down. Anyway, but it turns out that spot was something that was seen about 20 years back, but they called it gliosis, scar tissue. And I played a lot of sports, and so I probably got banged in the head a few times, and that was something. But they misdiagnosed it or something, and because we got the MRI from way back, they still had it at Suburban Hospital, so we got that, and it was in the same exact spot as my tumor, which had grown.
That doubled in size.
Yeah, doubled in size from that time.
Mm. Yeah, you say in the book, small coincidences, I'm summarizing, but small coincidences, like sometimes they add up and they lead to miracles. So this feels like one of those times where you had it was just a coincidence that you had an accident.
Yeah.
But, it led to this.
The woman who hit me was very nice. I mean, I say in the book, she almost seemed angelic. Like an angel had come down and said, we got to stop you. You got a problem here. You don't know it, but you got a problem. And so it's it almost feels like a miracle that woman did that,
Right. So
definitely her fault, but she did that.
Right. It was a good thing in the end, right?
And a good thing in the end.
Yeah. So you did mention your second surgery was in California. So
Yeah.
Tell us how, because this was another kind of coincidence. How did you end up connected with that doctor there?
Okay. Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, because I had hemophilia at Hopkins, they only wanted to do radiation chemotherapy. They didn't want to open my head again for fear of it having the same problem, the brain bleed that I had before. So I'm quite close with a woman named Ashley DeBeery. The DeBeerys live in McLean, Virginia. Ashley DeBeery has my exact same brain tumor, and her surgeon was Mitchell Berger at UCSF. So we were, as a matter of fact, we were in a rare brain tumor symposium at NIH, and not many patients in there, but all the greatest doctors from around the world. So it was, and they were focusing on like 12 different tumors, not this session. This session just involved one tumor, an oligodendroglioma. So we're at the event, and we end up having a conversation on the side at lunchtime with the California doctor who operated on Ashley in the first place. So he said, he looked at the MRI, he said, no, this has to come out. And it was 5 millimeters. Compare that to the 6 centimeters I had in the first place, but it's 5 millimeters, and they had to get it out. And so that was, I guess, December 2018, December 2018. And so on January 3rd, 2019, I was operating another brain surgery in California. And so
let me just interject. So this was the tumor that was still left over from the original surgery. I think probably because Dr. Brem at Hopkins couldn't have like such a clear field, he couldn't get all of the tumor out. So then a portion of this tumor turned to a higher grade. And so we discussed with the surgeon out at UCSF, he's like, we need to get as much that we can out. So that's why Bob went in for a second surgery, sort of, take it down as to the margins as far as he could go.
Yeah, they left about a third of my tumor. In the first surgery, I had to leave like a third of my tumor in my brain still. And so I kind of learned that after the fact. I was like, really? What'd you do that for? And so I think the field was not clear because I had so much bleeding on the top of my head too. But by the way, this bleeding thing, the bleeding occurred in the back of my head. The surgery was in the front of my head. So that was kind of surprising to all the people at the hospital. But I've heard there's some, I forget the French term, where you knock out one spot and it affects the other spot, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I was, so I was standing the night of the surgery, next to my room, walking the halls. And as Kim said, I was walking the halls of San Francisco like 3 days later, 2 days later.
Yeah. So the DeBerrys were really the ones who connected us with UCSF. And Bob met Ashley because after Bob's first surgery, she hosted the brain tumor gala at her home in McLean. And Bob went to that and met her. And this was after Bob's first surgery. It was probably in the spring. He went by himself. I was very nervous about letting him go just because, he had just sort of learned to walk again. But I was in no place mentally to like go to this. I was thinking, I just need a break. So I dropped him off and he went, and that's where he met Ashley and her husband, Alan. And we've been friends with them ever since. And so
that was like 4 months after my surgery. And I was like, it was on grass under a tent. And Sheryl Crow was there, she sang. And I'm like, even back 4 months later, I'm like, how can they have this out on grass when I can't even walk? Like all these people must have trouble getting around. But meanwhile, it's like, it's me. Like 6 months later, I'm like, yeah, I get it. No one there had a stroke, was going through that problem. But that's how my mind was kind of, in fact, that's the way I think I mentioned this in the book, that the way my mind worked as I wrote. And by the way, I had a lot of help writing the book. If you go to my website, you'll see all the people that helped me, lots of friends and Kim and all that, and my brother helping with the book. But where was I? What was I just talking about?
No, your thought was that everybody sort of sees the world or feels the world through your lens. You weren't.
Yeah, it was just a strange way of thinking about it. It's just, and I finally sort of came clearer, but it took a long time.
Yeah.
In my writing the book, I say the way I think is like, I have puzzle pieces in my head. I try to put the puzzle pieces together, but the puzzle pieces kind of keep changing shape as I progress. And so things that I thought might have sounded good in the beginning really didn't sound good because my mind was still not operating in the best way that it could. Mm-hmm. And then, so things now get much more clear, but back then it was kind of like, didn't come out. My brain, I wrote a lot for a living. And so I was a pretty good writer. And I thought my writing was pretty good. Kim would say, your writing is not good. So we'd have kind of debates about that. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that cancer is a journey. We hear that many times from our participants, and you never know who you meet along the way and the things that you come across that become important down the road. So that's why I was asking about those connections. But talking about writing, and it's great to hear you had a lot of help writing your story. What was it like to write it? It was kind of like reliving your story, and especially the difficult parts.
I didn't. First of all, Kim's the star of this show because Kim saw it all. I was off the planet for like 2 months. And
I think the writing has been very cathartic for him because I think he, like he said, his brain sort of has puzzle pieces. So he kind of remembers going into surgery and then not really anything until he really started to rehab.
Yeah. Like the winter of 2016, like didn't happen for me. It didn't exist. I wasn't floating above myself, like looking down at me. I don't want to, that would sound much more dramatic, but that didn't happen. I was gone. I came out. I'm like, Kim, like, what happened? What was everybody doing? What were they saying? It was really pretty bizarre.
So
I'm
this-
still asking that, like, what happened? You know, it's odd. So, you know, a lot of this book repeats what Kim told me happened.
Mm.
The idea of almost being dead, really? Shocking.
So do you miss being a lawyer? Do you miss the pace of the lifestyle that you had then?
I don't, well, I did it for like 34 years.
Mhm.
And so I get the idea, but you know, it's, yeah, I mean, I miss some of the strategy of thinking about things, and thinking about matters, and but I can't do it. I can't. Speech has been. I've had 4 speech therapists. Like, speech is not easy for me. I have to really work at it, and sometimes Kim will recognize. I'll say to Kim at night, like, I'll start to almost sound like I'm mumbling, and if it's late at night, I don't want to like really focus hard and speaking clearly. Focusing hard on speaking clearly because I'm doing this.
Mhm.
But
So after this, he'll take like a 2-hour nap. This is
yeah,
Right. I was going to say, sorry, we're
It's-
exhausting you
No, no,
today.
no, but this, you know, it's good
I
because
can do it. 'Cause I'm out.
it needs to
I'm
try.
not practicing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, but this is a good thing for me. I feel like I can speak reasonably clearly when I need to, but otherwise, if I don't really care what the answer is to the question I'm asking Kim, I say, well, ignore it, stop, because I don't want to say it again, you know. And like I'm a different. I'm not. I don't feel like personality wise I'm very different, but I do feel like there's a lot of changes that have happened to me. I'm very sensitive to noise. Like, Kim loves the sunroof open on the car. I can't have like sun like beaming down on me. And I need like the windows closed in the car. So, and Kim's like, what? You know, we gotta have the windows open. We gotta get the fresh air and not like I can't. That doesn't work well for me.
So speaking of your personality, I noticed in the book, you know, you definitely have a great sense of humor about things. You did mention that humor helps you. So were you like that before? Did you have a humor about life before, or do you think that this experience has helped you develop humor in a different way?
I've always liked comedy. So I mean, I've just found it to be something I focus more on to relieve anxiety now.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think of it in the past as something that I need to see or hear to, maybe a little bit, see or hear to relieve anxiety. It just did it. I liked it and wanted to see it.
Good. Speaking of humor, I thought it was funny that you have a book called Learning to Walk, because I thought we already all learned how to walk when we were babies, but sometimes we have to learn to walk again. In the book, you talk about not using a Fitbit or anything to count your steps. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Why you do that?
Yeah, my view on that is I have a course that I want to walk. I know it's like 3 miles. Like, I don't care how many steps I take in a given day. I don't need another device on me that tells me how many steps I took. I don't care. I just want to walk and feel good. I need to record and have a data chart on how far I walked each day. And that's how I feel about a lot of things. There's a lot of things I do in my life now that are, I guess, ritualistic. Even like getting coffee, and this is more like, I don't know, 4 months ago, or 4 months ago and back. It's kind of like I wanted to make sure I got my coffee in the most, and did other things in the most consistent way, so that I wasn't wasting any time. It sounds a little bit odd, but that's kind of the way I approach things. I almost felt like even taking a shower and how I approach that, just it almost gave me a benchmark for like, is everything sort of working right up there? Like, did you pour coffee into a bowl instead of a cup, or just to figure out whether things are operating. Like, I'm not a big game player. Like, that's my kind of game now. It's kind of like, are things working right? And so far so good. I guess I've gotten, less focused on getting coffee and doing exactly right, but it still enters my mind every day I get coffee. So
Good, those
yeah.
daily consistent rituals, sometimes they can be meditative and they can also be a good check that, hey, I'm still here.
Yeah. It's like if you're laughing, doing those things, you're still here.